Hey y'all, it's Hunter with Lone Star Woodworking, and in this video, I'm probably more excited to get this project started and finished than I have any other project leading up to this point. Because I think the technique I'm gonna be using here, and again, it's not an original technique by me, I've seen it a couple of other times, but I think it's gonna change how we make the type of furniture that I make. Right? I usually like to make coffee tables, dining tables, some console tables, things like that. Which historically go in areas of the home that have a lot of UV exposure. And as we know, epoxy, its kryptonite is UV exposure over time. It might last a little bit longer depending on the brand that you use, but overall you can, as the maker and as the person who is buying the furniture, expect that furniture is not going to last forever. Compare that to hardwood furniture that was made 200 years ago that's still here and might just need a little bit of refurbishing. I mean, the comparison of how long things last and what's actually an heirloom piece of furniture, it's no comparison at all. And so the idea here is that I'm gonna take this live edge slab of Osage orange. It has this very, very dull yellow-orange color to it, and I know dull is not usually a positive term, but in this case, I think it is. It's really pretty stuff. This is some of the straight grain stuff, but again, this is a mallet, so I wanted the straight grain stuff. That slab has some really nice cathedrals that I think are gonna look really pretty in the end. And I wanted a wood that was going to kind of complement and work with the yellow-orange color of this. So I picked up a bunch of Padauk, and it's my favorite hardwood. It's a beautiful, bright red African hardwood that smells amazing when you cut it and looks even better when you finish it. Now this is a boring piece of Padauk. And I say it's a boring piece of Padauk because this, by any other standard with any other wood, would be a beautifully figured piece of wood. And so that's what I'm saying, is that this kind of stuff, I would compare this kind of stuff to curly walnut, which means that walnut has to have that figuring in order to even compare to how this looks at its base. And it's not really an opinion. You can look at it. It's a beautiful piece of wood. It's got that natural chatoyance to it. Beautiful piece of wood. I don't care what anyone says. It looks better than walnut. Smells better than walnut. Looks better than maple. Smells better than maple. Give me any wood. It looks and smells better than that. So I'm really excited to get into this. Go ahead and check out Outer Woods and Marmota Works to see where I'm pulling inspiration from. They're linked down in the description. But let's get into this because I'm really excited.
All right, y'all. It has been almost a full year since my last video. I think last time I checked on my YouTube Creator Studio little app, it said it's been like 310 days as of the day I'm recording this. My bad. It's, over the last year, things have just gotten a lot more expensive. And so the commissions have slowed down substantially. And with things being more expensive, it also slowed down my ability to just go get a fun project slab just to make a video with. So that slowed things down for quite a while. But then on top of that, my wife got pregnant. And we actually just had our second boy. He was born in April, and so we've been living in that newborn bubble for a while now. So with things being more expensive, my wife being pregnant, preparing for the new baby, and then having the baby, the idea of getting out into the shop and spending extra money on, a fun project slab that doesn't have a commission attached to it, it just slowed everything down. And, it is what it is. Life is what it is, and sometimes it slows down. But we were finally able to get some project slabs. Me and my oldest boy were able to get out here and have some shop time. And so let's get into what we're doing now. So again, I'm just trying to make a river table that doesn't have an epoxy river because, as I just said in the first portion of the video, you can almost guarantee that an epoxy table is not going to last forever. Maybe 15, 20 years if you take care of it properly. But solid wood furniture, it'll stay around for a few centuries if you take care of it properly. And even if you don't take care of it, chances are it'll end up in someone's garage sale. And all you got to do is spend about, maybe 18 hours total in work to refurbish it. So I'm actually trying to make what would be considered an heirloom piece of furniture. Now, in order to trace out the live edge, I still needed a nice flat surface. So I just traced along the sapwood of this Osage orange, cut that off. My jigsaw didn't leave a nice square cut, so I needed to kind of square everything off. And for that, I needed a flat reference surface. So that's what I'm using this plywood for. I'm just making a template for my router to route along, so that way I can actually make the edges a perfect 90, so that when I glue it up, I don't have these really big, ridiculous gaps. My father-in-law was nice enough to let me borrow his until I could get my own. I actually still need to set mine up. I got it for, I think, Christmas or my birthday. And you can kind of see the idea that I have here, just setting it back about, I don't know, maybe 1/8 of an inch, just so I can take off a good bit of material, and then just taking my router and riding along. Now, I don't know how many of you have actually worked with Osage orange before or worked with Padauk before, but man, this stuff is splintery. I hear people complain about Wenge kind of being the same way, and this stuff was just really, really hard to work with, and both in its actual hardness and just its workability. It dulled out my blades really, really fast. It stains everything. It is such an oily wood that it stains absolutely everything, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to work with, but it looks absolutely gorgeous whenever you finish it. Now, before I continued on, I realized I didn't even decide what size I wanted this to be. And obviously, in order to use get my maximum value out of the slab, I wanted the table to be as big as possible, but also still be like a reasonably sized coffee table. So I drew out an ideal size on my garage floor and just started kind of templating everything out and trying to figure out how I wanted it to look. And I had 2 pieces of the Osage orange, and one of them I just cut in half, and I'm using them to fill in the corner pieces here. Now, I probably could have done this on my miter saw, but I also probably wouldn't have all my fingers if that were the case, if I chose to go that route. These things were just kind of awkwardly shaped, and so until I could get a nice flat reference surface, I really wasn't comfortable taking it over to the miter saw, which is what you just saw there. I was able to get a nice flat surface with my track saw, and then able to safely make that cut on the miter saw. Now, something you might notice, because I don't think that I have made a video since I kind of updated my shop, but my really big kind of oversized miter station, that's completely gone. I actually have 2 of the Harbor Freight little 60-inch workbenches as my miter saw wings now, and it's a whole lot better. I've been thinking about doing a shop tour video again. I haven't done one since I think mid 2024 or end of 2023. I can't exactly remember. So if you're interested in seeing what my setup is and what I recommend, go ahead and drop that comment. I'll probably make that video anyway, but I actually still want to see what the amount of interest would be. And that shot alone shows you just how splintery and dusty this wood can be. It got everywhere. It was ridiculous. Every time I had to stop, anytime I made one single cut on this wood without dust collection, I had to stop and basically clean up my entire garage because it was just going to make a mess out of everything. Now, to template out the shape on the Padauk, that was a little bit tricky because I don't know why. Maybe there was an easier way to do this, but for some reason, this seemed like the easiest option at the time, which was just take the Osage orange that I had already cut and basically use it as the template. I just propped it up on a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, clamped everything down, and then set it back just a hair, and then used that to ride along and cut into the Padauk. I hope that made sense, and I hope that if it doesn't make sense, you can kind of get an idea of what I was doing from this shot here, or maybe the prior shot. But overall, this worked out. I don't know how I would have done it better without a CNC. I don't know if I could have done it better with a CNC, but here you can see that it actually fits together pretty nicely. I was actually pretty impressed with myself for being able to get this fit, just cutting things out by hand and doing things by the seat of my pants. Now, I'm not going to show you the process of doing every other piece because it's just rinse and repeat. Now it's time to start gluing everything up, and y'all should give me a nice big pat on the back or maybe I'd settle for a like, or maybe if you want to really show your appreciation, you could subscribe. For showing the smallest iota of patience, because I really wanted to glue all of this up in one go, but because of the weird shapes that I had to cut out of these things, that just really wasn't going to be a possibility. So I had to glue it up, I think in 3 or 4 different glue ups. And each and every time, because I did do this by hand, and even though the fit was really nice, I still had to sprinkle some sawdust in there and kind of just shove it into those gaps. It's not perfect, but the gaps aren't so severe that this didn't hide them. Again, maybe I can figure out a better way to do this so that I don't have these gaps in the future, but I think given what I do know and given what I did have at this time, this was probably my best bet. Now, I left this really big piece on because it gave me a nice clamping call, basically. But before I take it over to Jason at Crafts Logworks, I'm going to go ahead and cut that off just so it's a little bit light, because despite how small this slab is, it is ridiculously heavy. Osage is incredibly dense. Padauk, not so much, but with the Osage in there, God, it was ridiculously heavy. Like, it's as heavy as some of the full-size tables that I've made, which is crazy to think about how dense this wood has to be. Now, second thing I need to apologize for, aside from taking so long to get another video out, this camera quality sucks. I don't know what was going on with my camera at this time, but I guess y'all can take comfort in the fact of knowing that I messed up my camera. Apparently, whenever I was pouring epoxy on this last project that I did, I got epoxy in the power switch, so it won't even turn on now. And I got it in the record button, so it wouldn't record even if I could turn it on. So I'm back to using my phone, which apparently the iPhone now can record in 4K and high definition, so it's doing everything that this camera would have done anyway with a lot easier workability. So hopefully the next project that I have, which I think y'all are going to like a lot, will have much better quality. Now I'm just squaring it up, getting rid of all the ugly areas. And again, I get comments all the time, especially on my social medias, talking about how shitty the Win is, or just how shitty the whole brand is. It's not really all that bad. It's kind of like the people that complain about Ryobi. Sure, Ryobi's cheap and they don't have like the most robust tools, but the tools work nonetheless. Like, this is a Vevor sander and it works fantastically. It works just as good as the Festool Rotex or that Bosch Rotex copycat. And then this sander works just as good as the Mirka, which this thing is trying to copycat. These sanders work great and they are for a fraction of the cost. I'll link these down in the description. I actually had a buddy of mine, well, we don't know each other personally. We know each other over social media. He's called Faded Owl Woodworks or Faded Owl Creations. I'll link him down in the description below too, because he's really cool. He's on TikTok and I think Instagram. He makes all kinds of really cool stuff from, I think, Caribbean woods. So he makes a lot of really cool stuff. He's down in Florida. But he turned me on to these sanders, and they work fantastically. So anyone who wants to come at me on my social media or in the comments here on YouTube and say that the tools that I'm using are subpar and couldn't possibly be the quality needed in order to produce the type of furniture that I build for the price that I usually ask for it, just try them. I promise you, you're going to save $1 and it's going to be just fine. And I even showed you that the track saw will cut nice and square as long as you cut properly, which is the same way you'd have to cut with a Festool. Argue with the wall, not with me. So you see that I cut those 45s on the corners, and that's just a design feature that I've been going with for a while now. I really, really like it. I think that this gem look is just more modern, and it's different enough to cause interest, but not so like out there that it's a turnoff. Now I went back and forth on what to do with this crack. I thought about just kind of leaving it, but was a little bit concerned that it was going to get worse over time, but I didn't really want to fill it with epoxy because that's kind of the whole point of this table, is not using epoxy. So in order to stabilize it, I just decided to go with this spline on the underside, and I called it a day. And it stabilized everything just fine, because that big crack did actually move a little. Like, you could take your fingers and kind of nudge the wood a little bit. So I wanted to make sure you couldn't do that, and I think I accomplished that. Now for my edge profile, I thought about just leaving it nice and square, but I decided that this 45-degree chamfer was still going to look best for the look of this table with the cut edges or the cut corners and everything. I don't know, it just kind of completes the look for me. Now again, things are more expensive, unfortunately, and so I decided to go with a base that wasn't going to be terribly loud and also was well within my budget. Because again, this doesn't really have a client attached to it. This is just for fun. I bought that base for, I think, $110 off of Amazon, and it works fantastically. It is super sturdy after I attach it the same way I would, you know, a flowy line base. And I love flowy line. I really do. Their bases are gorgeous. They're sturdy. They will last forever. They're just expensive. And so, again, I had to go with the cheaper option, unfortunately. But, again, just because it's cheaper doesn't mean it's inferior. As long as you do things right, everything will look good, and it'll stay nice and sturdy. And I actually really like this look. And the top is already pretty loud, you know, being yellow and orange. It's pretty loud, and so that base being kind of more subdued, you know, the plain black and just a kind of general shape, I think it looks really, really good with how loud the top is. Just being really careful sanding the edges. You don't want to go over and mess up your chamfer or anything like that. These woods are so freaking hard that I actually had a hard time screwing it up, which I guess is a good thing, but if it was anything softer, I'm talking about like walnut, which is, you know, a generally very, very hard wood, I wouldn't really take that risk. I'd probably just go with hand sanding it. Now for the finish, I'm using Rubio Monaco, and I know that in either my last video or the video prior to that, I talked about how I wasn't really super impressed with Rubio Monaco anymore, and that is still kind of the case, but sample 73, which is 4 Eyes Furniture finish, he ran out of it, or he wasn't in stock of it at the time, so I had to use this. And for some reason, this formula that I got, or maybe just the can that I got, seemed to work really well, because that Padauk just freaking pops. It is so beautiful. Again, Padauk is one of my favorite, it is my favorite wood, and you can see that it's got kind of that fire look to it, so it looks like a red epoxy river, and it's going to outlast any epoxy table that I will ever build, which is really, really cool to think about. So y'all, I really hope you enjoyed this video. It was really awesome to finally be able to work on something and start recording again and get back into the YouTube game. Hopefully I'll be more consistent with my videos. But until next time, I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you next time. See ya.